10 years ago, I wish I knew the 4 pillars of business success because they separate the 97% of entrepreneurs who struggle from the few who actually build something that lasts. These 4 pillars would save me thousands of dollars and years of painful lessons. Let me take you inside the remarkable transformation of LesserEvil, where Charles Coristine took a failing snack company that was losing tens of thousands of dollars per month and using this exact 4-pillar framework turned it into $100 million powerhouse. When Charles first looked at LesserEvil's books in 2011, the diagnosis was terminal. Most advisors would have said, "Hey man, just give up."
Because LesserEvil existed before I even got involved, and it had failed a couple of times, it was incredibly hard to raise money. We were burning probably, $75,000 to $100,000 a month. And I think that's pretty common for most entrepreneurs.
What happened next wasn't luck or a miracle. It was Charles using the 4 fundamental pillars, the same pillars I only discovered after painful trial and error in my own business. Have you ever spent months making something nobody wanted? Charles walked into this exact trap at LesserEvil, a company bleeding money by making healthy snacks nobody craved.
So what was the company and how did you pivot to popcorn?
They did do popcorn, but it was like a better for you than Frito-Lay. It wasn't really resonating with its consumers. So we figured we needed to try something.
The breakthrough wasn't creating something revolutionary. Instead, Charles flipped the script, taking products people already loved and making them slightly better, focusing on what customers would value, not what sounded impressive in a meeting.
Really where LesserEvil started to take off was we started making more mainstream products better. They weren't necessarily super healthy, but they were a lot better than what the alternatives were, and they appealed on taste.
The key, start small and improve based on real feedback, not on your assumptions. Charles didn't bet everything on untested ideas. He built a system for quick experiments and listened when customers spoke.
So when I started LesserEvil, we launched a lot of different things and we kept iterating, and finally we found something that resonated with consumers, and that was selling organic at a price that was very comparable to conventional with these higher level ingredients. We failed a ton of times, tried a lot of different products. And then in, I want to say 2014, we made the move into organic popcorn, and that was, kind of a game changer for us.
When I started my agency, I lost months and thousands of dollars building an SEO service my market didn't understand or even want. I had so many services and offers that prospects were just not interested in them. When I finally simplified one clear promise, like I make you a premium website that collects your leads, loads faster, and is maintained better, then the ball started rolling. Value isn't what you think is cool or what works. It's what customers immediately see as you solving their problem. Here's the hard truth. Most business owners hire resumes instead of humans. They treat employees like replaceable parts rather than the living engine of their business. Charles discovered a surprising approach that transformed LesserEvil from the inside out.
One of the best things that I learned about hiring was I would look to hire for skill. Okay, we need this, we need that. And I ended up getting some employees that I wasn't exactly thrilled with. When we made the shift to hiring for attitude, thinking that we could teach the skills or they could learn the skills over time, and that we only wanted can-do people, all of a sudden everything changed.
Instead of just building a workforce, Charles created something more powerful, a real community with shared purpose. People didn't just work at LesserEvil anymore. They belonged there.
Typically, people can feel lost in a factory because management views them as a factory worker. And I think what we've done a really nice job at is we try to promote within, and we bring a lot of people in, that we were going to talk about Spanish, that we have people in our front office now that are sitting with people that can speak both English and Spanish, and they're being trained in accounting. And these were people that were working on the line that had no accounting background. And the minute people see that that's possible, it brings a whole different kind of psychology to the workplace. If people believe they can do anything, it changes everything.
The revelation: culture creates performance, not the other way around. When people feel personally invested in a shared mission, they don't need to be pushed. They push themselves.
We do a lot of stuff together as a team. So we have a gym in our facility, and we have yoga classes, and we did Zumba classes. And people would come over from the factory, at 3 o'clock, you'll come into our gym now, and there's like 20 ladies that are fresh off the first shift, and they're working alongside you are, and they're eating lunch in the same cafeteria that we're all eating in. So it's just really cool. You'll see factory workers bring their families and come into the office and introduce themselves.
For years, I was a solopreneur, working during the day and during the night. Everything was either progressing or regressing because of me. Only when I built my team, everything changed. By having a team that all worked towards my vision, I was able to expand my operations. It's what allows me to build websites, post regular blog posts, and make these YouTube videos you're watching right now. Your people transformation starts here. Hire for attitude. Train for skill. Without systems, you don't own a business. You own a demanding job. Charles made a decision that experts could call crazy, but it transformed LesserEvil's entire path.
Well, first of all, I had to fix the margin thing, but what I didn't realize at the time is when I opened the factory, which was probably a silly move, was that it was a license to innovate. You could do anything we wanted with that thing, right? And not many people realize that.
Bringing manufacturing in-house instead of outsourcing gave 3 game-changing advantages that its competitors couldn't match. First, complete control over costs by cutting out expensive middlemen.
What the great equalizer was, we could make organic work because we manufactured our own products. So let's say you pay a co-packer 25% to make your goods. If you can invest that 25% and make it yourself, you can essentially make up the difference between that missing margin. So you can sell organic for almost the same price as you can sell conventional.
Second, the freedom to experiment quickly without the financial penalty of failed batches.
So we could fail over and over and over again. With a co-packer, that would cost you a fortune because you'd have to do a certain amount of line time. That's a day's worth of production. And what are you going to do with all this stuff? Oh, we don't like the way we taste. Let's try something else, and we just got really playful with it.
And third, obsessive quality control became their edge in a market where consistency is king.
We literally sit down every morning, Rachel and I, and we look at popcorn expansion, we look at the oil, we look at the salt coverage, we look at how fresh the popcorn is, and that's all we do.
Here's a surprising truth. Systems don't restrict creativity, they free it. Your systems revolution begins with this. Identify one repetitive process eating most of your time and mental energy. Document exactly how it works. Then ruthlessly ask, how can this run without my constant involvement? Start just this simple system, master it completely before moving to the next. Having revenue without financial engineering is like having a Ferrari with no engine. Looks good, but gets you nowhere at all. Financial engineering isn't about spreadsheets. It's about strategic moves that build wealth automatically.
When I think of developing a product, I go into it knowing exactly, where I need to manufacture for, because I know where I need to sell to a distributor. And if I don't have 50-point margins in it, or close to 50-point margins, or at least a road to 50-point margins, I'm probably not going to launch that product.
Charles turned LesserEvil's finances into their strongest competitive weapon through 3 critical moves. First, he approached funding strategically, securing money when it was available, not when desperately needed. This kept him in control and prevented bad terms.
And so the first thing I did when COVID hit was I went to my existing investors and tried to raise a little bit of a float, let's say an extra 6 weeks of capital, just to make sure that in a liquidity crisis that we were going to still survive. So that was the first thing I did.
Second, he made the counterintuitive move to stockpile inventory during market uncertainty, tying up cash in the short term, but protecting their most valuable asset, retail shelf space, as competitors just disappeared.
And to be honest, you were really worried whether you'd stay in stock. So we probably overbought in a big way. So you start tying up a ton of cash in your inventory position. Like my warehouse was just jam-packed with stuff. Because being out of stock means you lose shelf space, right? And it hurt our financials, in 2020, because it was all about survival, right? And I wanted to thrive while other people were, particularly the people with co-packers, weren't taking care of the little guys at all. And it all went to like the big guys, right?
Third, he timed price increases to match falling commodity costs, creating what he called the perfect storm for profit margins that fueled future growth.
We tried not to take a price increase. We did last year, and it takes 6 or 7 months before those prices start to take effect. So we put a price increase into effect middle of last year, and it's just coming into effect now. So it's kind of like the perfect storm. My prices are going to go up 7%, and my commodity prices are starting to come down to where they were before COVID. So it's going to add that to my bottom line.
One of my breakthroughs came from understanding unit economics. I intentionally created an unprofitable service at the beginning, such as building websites at a price point that barely covered costs. But this opened up the door to a pipeline of clients that could purchase higher margin services. This seemingly counterintuitive approach allowed growth that would normally take much more longer. Now for the moment of truth. How do you actually put these pillars into action without getting overwhelmed? How do you turn theory into daily practice?
So one thing I did learn as a bond trader was I made a lot of mistakes, but what makes a decent trader is you get out of your mistakes really quickly, right? And problems happen when you stay in a trade too long.
Okay.
So very similar to that, I kind of brought that mentality. It's like, okay, this isn't working, but I learned something from this failure. And there was something in the snack that I liked that I tried to transfer to the next thing, and then the next thing, and the next thing. And then we kept refining it. And I think the retailers respected us.
Implementation isn't about perfection, it's about momentum. Even Charles started with small shifts that created compounding returns. First, stop waiting for perfect clarity and start building momentum. Second, ruthlessly transform complexity into simplicity. Third, prioritize sustainable systems over quick wins. Remember, Charles didn't implement everything overnight. He built his success one intentional decision at a time over years. The key isn't speed or perfection. It's consistent movement in the right direction. I'm still implementing these principles myself, making progress one decision at a time. Drop a comment below. I read every one of them, and I'll share whatever I'm learning with you along this journey. Goodbye.